Hey there, it's Andrea Olson from Go Diaper-free, and I'm going to record podcast number 87 right now, which is all about stories from Indigenous Asia. Please enjoy the storytelling here, and let's begin. Welcome to the Go Diaper-free podcast, where we're all about helping you stop depending on diapers as early as birth. I'm your host, Andrea Olson, author and mom of 5 babies, all EC'd from birth, all out of diapers by walking. I've also helped hundreds of thousands of other parents start EC with their babies. This is episode 87, Infant Potty Training in Indigenous Asia, How People Potty Their Babies in Countries Without Diapers, Part 2. So you can read the written version of today's show over at godiaperfree.com/87, where I will link to things that I mention and reply to comments when you're finished. This is part 2 of sharing stories from a few groups of Indigenous peoples around the world who still potty their babies and do not use diapers. Last time we talked about Africa. This time we're going to talk about Asia. I get asked this question all the time. Andrea, do people do elimination communication in Indigenous communities? Or is it altogether something different? And I've answered this question over in part 1 of this series back in episode 86, so check that out if you haven't already. Okay, so let's get on with today's stories. I've handpicked my faves from Lori Bouquet's wonderful book, Infant Potty Training, and also an article by Continuum Concept author Jean Liedloff. If you haven't read either of these books, please do so immediately. Today, we will share about infant potty training habits in Asia. Again, we did Africa last time in episode 86, and we'll pick up with Antarctica and the Americas in the final story sharing episode of this series in a few weeks. Okay, so most of these, except the Balinese one, which was written by Jean, I will read directly from Lori Bouquet's book, specifically part 4 of her book, Cross-Cultural Studies, pages 317 to 328. Read along with me if you have it, or get a copy of her book if you want to read all of the stories and even more from this trailblazing EC expert. She also has a shorter ebook available on Kindle right now. It's called Infant Potty Basics. That's linked in the show notes as well. GoDiaperFree.com/87. Okay, so first we're going to talk about infant potty training in French Polynesia with the Marquesans. The undiapered, and this is from about 1970s on Uapau. The undiapered baby is held away from the caregiver when the caregiver thinks he will urinate. All routine caregiving activities are performed while the baby faces outward. The 12 to 18-month-old begins to understand to go outside to urinate and defecate. That's funny, this is me talking now, that 12 to 18 months is also the Montessori sensitive period for toilet training to begin and end. And also that's when I love to tell people to pass the baton and wrap up because it's the best time to do so. Looks like we're not the only ones. Next, let's talk about infant potty training in India with the Lepchas. This account was published in 1938. The teaching of sphincter control is meant to start at the age of 3 months when the children are taken out onto the balcony at regular intervals. They should learn to cry when they want to be taken out, and by the time they can crawl, should be able to crawl there by themselves. And next is India with the Sikhs. Sikh mothers generally begin toilet training in infancy. They quickly learn to sense when their babies need to go through observation of or advice from more experienced women. They use timing, intuition, and cues from a baby. A mother will either squat and hold her baby in position in her arms, or else sit on the floor or ground and use her feet to form a toilet seat for the baby. And then a couple paragraphs later, in traditional Sikh society, babies do not wear diapers. From birth, they are taught modesty and wear special Sikh underwear. Skip another paragraph. The whole family sleeps in one room. Sturdy cots the size of a single bed are the norm. The baby usually sleeps on the mother's chest or right next to her without diapers. A mother is so attuned to her baby that she automatically wakes up during the night when it is time for her baby to go. I'm going to pause the reading there just to mention that even in another room in my house with a baby monitor on, of course, I wake up 5 minutes before my baby does when they need to pee at night, whether it's the boy or the girl, which of my 5, I've always done that. It's like I know right before they have to go, even if we're not bed sharing, which we do at the beginning. But when they're a little older, they're in their own room, they're in a crib with a monitor, and I can tell, I know I wake up when it's time for them to go. Back to the reading. Most claim their babies are toilet trained around the age of 6 to 9 months. This takes into account the fact that a child still needs some help getting to the bathroom, undressed, and into position. So basically everything. Skip a paragraph. Infant toilet training is the standard method used throughout the country of India by Hindus, Muslims, etc., as well as Sikhs. In addition, this same method is used throughout heavily populated neighboring countries such as Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. Very cool. The next one I want to read is from Infant Potty Training in Japan on page 321. This is from the 1963 book, Six Cultures, the village of Taira in Okinawa, Japan. When the infant is anywhere from 22 days to 10 months old, the mothers start trying to anticipate urination before the baby wets his diapers. Each mother trains herself to the child's particular cues, squirming, peculiar facial expressions, and so on, or keeps a kind of mental time check. So just to pause the reading, it's just exactly like what we do with observation time, picking up on cues and signals, facial expressions, signs that they need to go, and also learning our baby's natural timing. Okay, and then continuing on with the reading. Holding the infant in a semi-sitting position out over the edge of the porch and supporting him under his knees with her hands and at his back with her chest, she coaxes gently, repeating "she" until he urinates onto the ground outside. If the mother is successful in her efforts, she hugs, kisses, and praises the infant. On the other hand, if she does not reach him in time and he is already wet, she will hold the child over the wet diaper and say "she." Just to pause the reading, we also will do, I often have recommended this in my book as well. If you are missing it and you know you can't get the diaper off in time and they're like pooping in their diaper, or you can tell that something's going on, you can hold them in position while still wearing the diaper and make the noise. This establishes sound association, which I think this is what the Japanese are doing right here. And to finish up the reading, this is to ensure that he is fully eliminated, or if the interval between diaper checks has been long, to make certain that he does not need to urinate again before putting on a fresh change. And that's all for that reading. And I would have to say about that last sentence too. Yes, we always offer if we have missed something, because you never know if that was something we'd miss a half hour ago or 10, 15 minutes ago. And if there's more, or we just, before you put on a fresh diaper backup, you always want to make sure they get a chance to go to the bathroom before that. That's a good transition time. One of the 4 easy catches, actually, at every diaper change, even if you've missed. Japanese and I are on the same page. Okay, page 323. Actually, before that, let's go over to Jean Liedloff's article, Back to Bali from 1992. Now, Jean unfortunately passed away somewhat recently, and 10 years ago, and she was amazing. If you haven't read the Continuum Concept, please read it. It's amazing. She didn't intend for it to, but it became a sort of parenting manual, and it's brilliant. Okay, this is called, from an excerpt actually from my book on page 268 or so. I don't know, it might have changed by the time you hear this, because I'm doing revise. I always revise my book all the time to keep it fresh. But yeah, it's in there. It's in my book. A Balinese example from Jean Liedloff. Quote, "Then he gave signs of wanting to pee. He wasn't wearing diapers. The parents told him to go to the edge of the floor. There was no wall on that side to go. And the child went by himself, relieved himself over the edge, and came back. There was no sharpness. It was just, this is where you go. It wasn't angry or punishing, and it wasn't permissive. It was the third way, to give the child the information about what to do, because that is what social beings want to know." Oh man, end quote. I just, be still my beating heart. She speaks the truth. Okay, page 323 of Lori Bouquet's book, Back to Infant Potty Training. Let's talk about infant potty training in Micronesia, the Truk Islands. Ann Fisher studied there in Micronesia from 1946 to 1949. This is part of her report. Mothers are very sensitive to their children's elimination schedule. Time and again, the mother will put the child off the mat just before it urinates. One mother stated that she knew her child would urinate right after it awakened and after it ate. I'm going to pause the reading, and that is exactly, those are easy catches, you guys. Right after wake-ups is an easy catch, and after eating is a transition time that we love to catch a pee after they eat or poop. Continuing with the reading, the mother, seated on the floor, stretches her legs out in front of her and places the child with its head on her knees and its body lying along her legs toward the ankles. The child urinates in this position. After it is placed in this manner, the mother makes a sound with lips moving, which sounds like psst. There is a special Truckese word for this sound, and it is always used when the child urinates at the direction of its mother. Supposedly, it represents the sound of flowing urine and should give the child the idea that it is now time to urinate. This direction is not always obeyed by the child, and accidents do occur on the mat. In this case, the mother wipes up the urine with a towel or rag and does not express concern over it. End quote. And that leaves me with so many thoughts, so many things. But let me read the rest of this too. But before I do, that we have misses. And in this case, especially when the child, is clearly not mobile, the one that they're talking about in this excerpt, the mom doesn't express concern over it because it's something that where they've just missed each other. A miss is just information, and she'll know next time to follow the signal that it's time to go. And also the sound of flowing urine. Hey, it's okay to pee right now. That's exactly what we use it for. That's why we do sound association. And the next part of this same excerpt. After he is 1 year old, the child may begin to show some concern over pleasing his elders in this respect, and it is during this time that he is told what is desired of him, although never in severe terms. So again, we are gentle. EC is gentle. It is also straightforward. We are telling them what is expected of them or desired of them at the age when they're able to go, okay, yeah, I get it, and I'm going to do it. And that was when he's 1 year old, they say there. And the next part of this section, mothers will take small babies out of the house when they awake or at other times when they may be expected to urinate, and will carry them out also if they begin to defecate, if this is convenient. But if it is not, the feces are simply cleaned up off the mat or the mother's legs or wherever they may be with no apparent concern. The child's buttocks are usually cleaned with the mother's finger and rinsed with water. Later, when the child can walk, he will gently be directed outside when he eliminates, but a lapse is not punished. So I have a lot of things here too. This is so wonderful that at waking time and other times when they may be expected to urinate. This is again because of the ADH hormone. It wears off. We all have to pee. We don't soil ourselves during the night time and when we wake up. Even in between sleep cycles, we need to urinate usually. I do. My babies do as well. So do all the other babies that we've helped. When they begin to defecate, we always say wait, gently wait, and bring them to the toilet and have them finish there or do it there. If it's not convenient, we clean it up and we don't scold them for it. Totally fine. Okay, next let's talk about infant potty training in New Guinea, the Quoma. So John Whiting spent 7 months among the Quoma in 1936. So the mother makes no attempt at toilet training while the child is still an infant. She simply learns to anticipate his bowel and bladder movements, quickly lifting him from her lap and holding him over the earth floor. So just to pause the reading there. So we're not actually training, and EC is not considered toilet training. EC is a matter of helping the child do what they can't do for themselves until they can. So she's learning to anticipate his bowel and bladder movements, just as she learns to anticipate when he's hungry or when he's tired. Okay, back to the reading. The feces are then wiped up with a leaf. Sometimes the mother does not lift the child quickly enough and he urinates on her leg. In such cases, the leaf is again used and the child is not held accountable for the mistake. Cleanliness training begins at approximately the same age as weaning. They don't mention what age that is. The mother is comparatively gentle in teaching her child toilet habits. So just to pause the reading, this is what I recommend happen passing the baton between 12 and 18 months. They call it cleanliness training. She tells him, back to the reading, she tells him that adults go outside near the garbage heap to urinate and that he is big enough to do likewise. Similarly, she points out that adults do not defecate in the house, but in the household latrine. She takes the child with her to the latrine and holds him while he relieves himself until he has learned to do this without it. When I asked an informant whether a mother punishes her child if he persistently defecates in the house, he answered, no, of course not. He is her own child, isn't he? Why should she punish him? It is her duty to clean up after him if he defecates in the house. And just to pause the recording or the reading there, yeah, it's her job to teach him where the poop goes. And if he's not doing it, then she is not doing her job. That's basically what this guy's saying, I think. And then to finish this reading off, although this may express the theoretical position of the Quoma native, in actual practice, the infant is more recalcitrant and the mother less patient than the statement would indicate. Cleanliness habits are usually already established by the time a boy or girl reaches childhood. Informants stated that if a slip occurs, it is the child's own business, except that he is forced to clean up after him. So I also recommend that in my potty training material, or if you have an older child and you're trying to wrap it up with EC, is that we want to, if they have an accident, they have to help clean it up or they have to clean it up depending on the age. So this is also what the Quoma were doing back then. And by the time they reach childhood, I'm assuming that's when they start walking. I'm not really quite sure about the timing on this particular part of the book. Okay, now let's talk about infant potty training in Oman. Just have about 5 more. And 1982, in Behind the Veil in Arabia, Uni Wikan. Swaddling is common in the winter. The baby is wrapped in a large piece of cloth that covers all of his body except for the head and buttocks. Training the infant to control his bowel movements begins as early as between 4 and 6 months of age. Bladder control is considered of less importance, and thus the buttocks must be left uncovered. I thought that was cute and nice to share. Infant potty training in the Philippines, the Tarongans. I am a quarter Filipino myself. I found this one really interesting, and my assistant is Filipino. This is in one of the studies of 6 cultures in the Philippines. Infants are never left to cry. Clothing consists of a short shirt or dress. No diapers or underwear are worn. And then, quote, the infant is covered loosely, if at all, below the waist. When interviewing or chatting, when he urinates, the puddle is wiped up or the cloth is changed. If the mother's clothing is wet, it is ignored. While interviewing or chatting with mothers of infants, we noticed that in almost all instances of the child's wetting the mother, her response was to merely shift the child to a dry part of the lap and shift the wet portion of the skirt so that it would dry. There was no verbal or facial recognition of the incident. Precautions are taken, however, against the mother's clothes being soiled by feces. A folded cloth is kept under the buttocks of infants, and after defecation, the cloth is replaced. At 6 months or so, training is begun by moving the child to a corner of the kitchen porch over the waste puddle for both urination and defecation. That could be, and just to pause the reading there, that could be similar to what my grandmother has told me about training back in the, 1930s and 40s. Just having them, when they're able to sit, start to go pee and poop in a corner of nearby the kitchen where mom used. And to finish the reading, toilet training is intensified sometime before weaning, usually at about 1.5 years old, when the child is able to understand simple verbal instruction and express his need to urinate or defecate. Bowel, like bladder control, is attained with no apparent. Okay, so I just want to comment on here. That's the end of that part of the book on the Philippines. 1.5 years, so that's about 18 months old. That's when we recommend wrapping it up between 12 and 18 months. By 18 months, they should start telling you around then, if not before, that they need to go. And they're saying here that they're able to express their need at that time in words, it sounds like. Okay, the next one is infant potty training in Taiwan. And then we have Tibet and Turkey, and we're done. Taiwan, 1969 book, Taiwanese village of Kushen by Norma Diamond. Carrying the child on her back, the mother soon becomes sensitized to motions or cries indicating that the child is about to urinate or defecate, and she removes it from her back and holds it over the ground or a ditch to relieve itself. Toilet training thus begins at a very early age, for when the child urinates, the mother makes a whistling sound. Soon she begins holding the child and making the whistling sound to encourage it to urinate. Again, that's what we teach in sound association. More serious toilet training begins around the end of the first year. Once children can walk, they have no problem continuing on their own, in part because they wear open pants. That's split crotch pants. All they have to do to stay clean and dry is squat. So around the end of the first year, you guys, 12 to 18 months is when I recommend wrapping up EC, and that is, this is not just happenstance, this is what works because of capability of children. And then somebody else, Bernard Gallen and his wife, went to the Sinsing village in 1957 to 8 and wrote this. By the time the child is 6 or 7 months old, his diaper is replaced by training pants slit open at the crotch. Toilet training. Oh, this is by Marjorie Wolf in Taiwanese, studying Taiwanese women in the rural areas in 59 to 61. Toilet training is not something that arouses much concern or interest among Taiwanese mothers. The intimate contact between mother and child during the first few months allows the mother to know her baby very well. Mothers claim to be able to identify the restless movements the child makes before she urinates and use the signal to spread the child's legs and hold her away from their own body. The mother accompanies this act with a whistling noise so that in time the child associates the sound with the activity and empties her bladder on command. Again, sound association. Diapers are used only at night, and many mothers claim even these can be dispensed with after 6 weeks. Wait, what? When did they start? Yeah. 6 weeks. Mothers say they can keep a dry bed by holding the baby over the edge several times each night. The advantage of earth or concrete floors, they just go right on the ground, and whistling. Bowel control is equally undramatic. When a child can walk, she is encouraged to go to a garbage heap or drainage ditch. Accidents are not punished unless one counts the looks of disgust by an older sister who has to clean it up. Undoubtedly, the great number of acceptable toilet areas takes the emotional pressure off both mother and child. Beautiful. Now, infant potty training in Tibet. In a 1997 book, The Tibetan Art of Parenting by Maiden and Farwell, Toilet training often begins with association by sound. Do you guys see a theme here? The mother makes a specific sound, and then the child slowly identifies that sound with the need to use the toilet pot. Soon the child learns to make these sounds, and in response, the mother points to a place for the child to go, or bring the pot herself. By 1.5 or 2 years old, the child does this independently. Hello. Beautiful. Okay. Last story. Infant potty training in Turkey. 1970, Eastern Anatolia. These were secluded villages over there. Diapers were not used. The child being put to sleep in his cradle, bundled up with a type of soil that soaks up the urine. The wet soil is dried in the sun and used again the same way. Occasionally, a kind of wooden apparatus is fitted to the child's genital area, the urine passing through a pipe to a receiving cup on the floor. Interesting. Children wear dresses without underwear so as to make it easy to eliminate. Defecation is a private function, which is performed out of sight, while urination is performed casually in public. As soon as they can walk, toddlers are taken by older children to specified defecation locations. You guys, I can totally imagine my 6-year-old daughter taking my 15-month-old daughter out to go poop. That's awesome. Appropriate toilet behavior is regulated by shaming. Okay, so we got toilet shaming going on, and the children seem to learn quickly and sensitively about what is required of them. It's interesting because shaming is, we shaming, obviously, but I think that socialization often also happens by just honest responses from other people who are like, hey, no, actually, we don't do that here. This is not okay for the safety and sanctity of everybody. No. And that shaming used to be a really normal part of life, not in a way to like make fun of people, but in a way to go, hey, honestly, that's not cool. So that's interesting too. So that was Turkey. I hope you enjoyed listening to all these stories as much as I enjoyed sharing them with you. A big thank you to Lori Bouquet. Please get a copy of her book, Infant Potty Training. There is a link to it in the podcast, godiaperfree.com/87. Read and see all the photos of these lovely historical accounts of Indigenous pottying habits and the history of the evolution of Western potty training habits, which is also phenomenal in her book. Also, a big thank you to Jean Liedloff. She passed away earlier this century, yet her book, The Continuum Concept, leaves us a valuable glimpse into what life was like in Stone Age South America. I think it's back in the 60s or 70s that she wrote her book and lived with them for many years. This is something, the way life was when she was down there, something that has likely already disappeared from existence. In other words, is extinct. With so much gratitude, Jean. So that's it for today. Again, see the written version of this podcast over at godiaperfree.com/87. And now I'd like to hear from you. Head over to that page right now and let me know. What is the number one biggest thing you got from listening to or reading today's stories? I'll see you over there. And see you next time when we answer the question, should you do EC or should you potty train? And more specifically, at what age can I potty train my child? Which method should I use? We will talk about that next time. Happy pottying, y'all. I'm Andrea Olson, and you've been listening to the Go Diaper Free podcast at godiaperfree.com. See you then. Woohoo! That was it. That was a lot. I hope you love those stories. I loved sharing them. Again, this is Lori's book, Infant Potty Training. So many cool stories. So many just lovely things that she researched and reported there. They have a publishing company, her and her husband, and they published that themselves. So enjoy. Please write in the comments below if you'd like me to cover anything else in the podcast or on a video on the YouTube channel. And I look forward to seeing that there. And let me know if you have any questions or comments or what did you love about this today? And be nice. Sometimes, YouTube, we got some trolls over here that just they're like teenage boys or something going, ho, 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 they're talking about potties and poops. But this is serious stuff, you guys. This is important wisdom that's been lost. I think it's important to share these stories. So share this with somebody if you'd like to. And I'll see you soon. Subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll let you know next time.